all of everything that's out there. They're all over the place too. So how do we deal with this? If you take someone who's not internet savvy and you put these two things in front of them and you say, all right, you're going to teach with this in the classroom. And before, they could just open up their book with their index and say, okay, we're now starting on Chapter 3, Section 2, know the questions in the back, and you want me to switch from that into this, you're going to get resistance. So we have to make that easy. Now our challenge is all this web content's out in the cloud, and then we have all these Web 2.0 tools in the cloud. So how do we get to it? By the way, these are children from Webe, Kenya. I love these kids. I would sleep in the orphanage and go to school with them every morning. And the idea is, how do we get all this great knowledge to them without me getting too romantic here? We have out there content, collaboration, and it's all woven together. So all of this stuff is in the cloud. Now here's the trick of those that are being sold to by the vendors, and keep in mind, I wrote a lot of work for some of these vendor spins. The cloud idea is really not a new idea. Mirrored servers is not a new idea. These are very, very old ideas. And a vendor teaches the cloud, which is basically like an application server. It's my cloud. It all sits in my server, which is basically an LMS. The way the cloud or the web really works is all of the stuff is out there, and we have to aggregate it. And how do we do that? That's the challenge. How do we, as a teacher, do that? Well, there's one vendor that also was part of this challenge for me to write all this stuff together, and it ended up being a client for a while. And they came out with a concept called a web education system. That company is called Bascom. They've been around for around 7 years. And what they've kind of figured out how to do is, how do we aggregate all, in a flexible way, so I can add things and subtract. How do I aggregate all these tens of thousands of educational websites and the tools together in a safe, filtered environment, keep out the stuff like martinlutherking.org, that type of stuff, keep it safe for these kids, yet keep it flexible so people can get out and get what they need. This is what they came up with, kind of an interesting thing to look at. So what you're looking at here is, this is their My Web library, and believe me, I'm not going to pitch a whole system. I'm going to show you the screen. But I just want to show you what can be done. This is an interface. To me, the web for a child should just be like walking down the hallway and going into a library. Everything's in sections. I can click through it. It's all filtered. So what if someone came down to earth and told you that educating the world's possible, and you're already on your way, and you are already on your way. So now we're going to go into some methods. This is going to go fairly quickly. And Neil, I can stay on the line a little bit more over the end time. Traditional e-learning, when you learn ADDIE and everything else in corporate, is assess, present, and test. I have a derogatory way of talking about this, but I won't. If I go into adult learning, the e-learning gets a little bit more interactive. I prepare the person, get them ready to learn information. I present them information. I have them do some interactive practice, and then I have them perform it in the real world. And all of this works because it's me and my bubble. All the information for this course is self-contained. Unfortunately, on the Internet, in the real world, that's not the way it works. I think most of us know how to change a diaper. Some change a typer. Some change a disk drive. We know all sorts of different things that we learned in teeny pieces. It's called search learning. It's a relational way of learning. And never took a course on how to change a diaper. Matter of fact, I've raised 2 kids. I'm raising 4 more. I never take a course on raising a kid. So how can I possibly competent to do that? Or some days I wonder if I am competent to do that, but that's another thing. So we start with a problem on the web, and then we discover it. And the interesting thing in the discovery process, sometimes we realize the problem wasn't the problem we thought we had, and we start redoing the questions. So the discovery is interesting. How many of you, when you've been in Google, you did your first Google search, when you came back with these things, and that's not what I want. I'm going to ask it another question. And then when you found some additional information, the question changed again. So it's not indexed, it's not clear-cut. And then at some point, we're going to adopt it. At some point, we're going to say, yep, this is the recipe we're going to have tonight, and we'll collaborate. This is the recipe I have. I have all these different things. I'm going to order this different food. I'm going to call up the wife and ask her what she wants to do. I love to cook, and this is kind of how it works. And then we share. Then we publish something. Now, the interesting thing about this phenomenon and how it changes things is children feel highly disconnected from where the current classroom is because it's not significant on whether I get an A or an F or not. What is significant is if I publish. So what is really cool is if that I put a picture up and a whole ton of people comment on Facebook. So this sharing aspect is this aspect that connects me to the real world. It makes me significant. This we call micro-learning paths. Problem, discover, we choose to adopt, collaborate, and share. And in putting this in front of educators, there's a very wealthy private school here that JFK, the Kennedys went to when they were children, and very elite level of training. And in putting this in front of their technologists, came out with a very interesting thing. He says, what we train kids here to do is trust, and that you must trust the knowledge you have before you move ahead, because you're going to be responsible. Now, what's interesting is, in each one of these phases, trust is a factor. So if I'm doing project-based learning, when I adopt something, I'm going to really think about if this is right or not before I talk to the group about it. And when the group talks about it and interchanges and that type of electricity happens, then it changes again. And then the group has to decide whether they're going to publish this in front of the classroom or even on the World Wide Web. Once it's published, it loops back into the discovery process, back into the net. So everything is constantly changing. So the new test is not sharing what you know. When we share what is given to us, we define our significance. It's all about sharing and publishing, and that's what Web 2.0 does. It's a publishing tool. Now, once I share, an interesting thing happens. You know, how do we change kids with the dialogue that I remember very clearly when we're studying with Kirschenbaum and Simon in U.S. Education and Values Clarification. But when we share, we change the adoption process. Because the class, let's say if I shared something here and another class and somewhere else in the world is in the discovery process, they'll see it. So classes are changing other classes. And this is where this all gets really, really quite interesting. So before it's how do we reach the kids? Now it's another thing, how do the kids reach me? Now, for those of you that do Web 2.0 learning in the classroom and see the excitement, you find a teacher that's really great at it, and they'll tell you, oh no, the kids teach us. All we do is guide it. So as teachers in Web 2.0, we change our roles. We start things, we guide them, we publish them. It all looks like project control, and that's basically what is happening. And the events are somewhat unpredictable, and this can be unnerving about Web 2.0, but I want to reassure you on that. This model of micro-learning paths, you can use a rubric with. So each aspect of the rubric, and I know I'm moving very fast here, but you can download this from your website to digest it a little bit later. In a rubric, I can do objectives, tasks, quality. I can move through each one of these things for a particular lesson. And what it is, it's like project control. Now, this is one of the reasons why I've done all of the stuff up to this point. Up to this point, I want to give you a methodology of how you can use Web 2.0 tools in a classroom in a structure. Because when I go to the STE and I go to the other conferences, I don't see this really mapped out very clearly. I see all the pieces. The first phase is an exploration phase. The next phase is the agreement phase. This is where the learning really takes place. And let's plug in some of the stuff the Internet does. I can do Google. I can do other search